At 12:07 a.m., my phone lit up with a message from the married woman who lived next door. Rebecca Hayes and I had exchanged maybe 20 sentences in the 2 years we had been neighbors, most of them about trash pickup or packages left on the wrong porch. So when I read, "Mark's asleep, are you free?" I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim in my hand. I was 29, single, and not interested in becoming the reason somebody else's marriage exploded. I typed back, "Are you in danger? Do you need me to call 911?" 3 dots appeared instantly. Then Rebecca answered, "No!" Oh, God, that sounded terrible. There's water pouring into the basement. Mark just got home from a 14-hour hospital shift and I can't wake him up. You said you work in maintenance. I don't know where the main shutoff is. What happened after I crossed her driveway should have ended with a wrench and a wet floor. Instead, it uncovered a mistake buried inside the walls. A secret from my own past, and a woman I hadn't met yet who would eventually make me question everything I believed about guilt, trust, and second chances. If you've ever misjudged a situation from one sentence, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments whether you would have crossed that driveway. I put on jeans, a sweatshirt, and work boots, grabbed my flashlight and adjustable wrench, then stepped outside into the cold Ohio night. Rebecca was waiting at her front door barefoot, wearing gray sweatpants and a University of Cincinnati hoodie. Her dark hair was twisted into a loose knot, and she looked less like a woman arranging a secret midnight meeting than someone trying not to panic. "Thank you," she whispered, "and I am never texting anyone like that again." I'm going to pretend I didn't read the first version. Please do. Where's Mark? Upstairs. He's emergency room nurse. He worked 14 hours, drove home through sleet, ate half a sandwich, and practically passed out standing up. And the water? Her expression changed immediately. Basement. I could hear it before we reached the bottom of the stairs. Not dripping. Not leaking. Rushing. Water was spraying from a split line behind a half-finished utility wall, running across the concrete floor and spreading toward an electrical panel mounted less than 6 feet away. I stopped so fast Rebecca nearly walked into me. "Don't step down here." "What?" "Stay on the stairs." She looked past me and saw where the water was going. "Oh my God." "Did you touch the panel?" "No." Good. I had seen enough maintenance disasters to know the difference between inconvenient and dangerous. This had already crossed the line. The main shutoff wasn't where most builders would have put it. I found the meter, followed the supply line, and realized the shutoff had been boxed behind an access panel that somebody had painted shut. "Whoever renovated this basement hated homeowners," I muttered. Rebecca gave a nervous laugh. "Can you stop it?" "I can if I can get that panel open." I wedged the end of my wrench under the trim. The first pull did nothing. On the second, the wood cracked. On the third, the panel came loose so suddenly I staggered backward. Behind it was the valve. I turned it clockwise. Nothing happened. My stomach tightened. I tried again, harder. The valve moved half an inch and stopped. "Daniel?" "It's seized." That sounds bad. It's not great. The water had reached within a few feet of the electrical panel. I aimed my flashlight higher and saw something that made every instinct I had start screaming. A splice box had been mounted beneath the panel. The cover was loose. Water was running down the wall toward it. "Rebecca, go upstairs." "What?" "Wake Mark. Right now." Her face lost its color. I pulled out my phone and called the utility emergency line while backing toward the stairs. We needed the power disconnected from outside, not at the wet panel. Rebecca disappeared upstairs. 30 seconds later, I heard footsteps. Mark came down wearing scrub pants and a t-shirt, his hair flattened on one side and his eyes barely open. "What happened?" "Pipe broke near the panel," I said. "Don't come down." Sleep vanished from his face. "Rebecca?" She's fine. The lights flickered, once, twice, then there was a sharp pop from inside the wall. Mark swore. Everybody outside, I said. We were halfway through the kitchen when the basement smoke detector started screaming. Rebecca froze. Is the house on fire? Outside. She tried to turn back. My cat! I'll get him, Mark said. No, you won't. The cat solved the argument by shooting out from beneath the dining table and racing toward the front door as if he understood the situation better than all of us. We got outside less than a minute before a utility truck turned onto our street. By then, a faint burned plastic smell had started drifting through the basement vents. The fire department arrived soon after. There was no open flame, only an electrical arc inside the junction box that had scorched insulation before the power was cut. The firefighter who inspected the wall told us we had been lucky. Very lucky. The pipe failure had been bad. Water hitting energized wiring could have been much worse. By 2 a.m, the power was off. The water was off at the curb, 2 restoration fans were running from a temporary exterior supply, and Mark stood beside me in his driveway holding 2 paper cups of coffee a firefighter had given us. He looked exhausted. You saved my house. I found a valve. You got my wife out before that panel arced? You would have done the same. I was unconscious. Asleep. My wife says she shook me twice. Rebecca, standing beside him with the cat wrapped in a towel, said, I considered checking whether you had a pulse. Mark looked at me. 14 hours in the ER. I heard. He turned toward Rebecca. And apparently my wife's first move when I'm unconscious is to text the single guy next door at midnight. She covered her face. I apologized for the wording. Mark started laughing. Not angry laughter, the exhausted kind that came after discovering the disaster had stopped just short of catastrophe. I laughed too. For a few minutes, standing beneath a street light while sleet clicked softly against the pavement, the whole thing felt absurdly simple. A pipe had broken. I had helped. They were safe. That should have been the end of it. Then the fire captain came outside holding a blackened metal plate. You know anything about the basement renovation? Mark shook his head. Previous owner finished it. The captain looked at me. You work maintenance? Yes. You might want to look at this. He handed me the plate. It had come from the electrical junction box. On the reverse side, barely visible beneath soot and oxidation, was an old contractor sticker. Buckley Home Systems. My fingers went cold. Rebecca noticed. Daniel? I turned the plate over again, hoping I had misread it. I hadn't. Mark frowned. You know that company? I handed the plate back. I used to work for them. When? 7 years ago. The answer came automatically, but my mind was somewhere else. 22 years old, a dented work van. A supervisor named Len Dorsey telling me code was something inspectors worried about, not installers. A basement on the north side of Columbus. Red PEX tubing, cheap fittings, an argument beside an electrical panel. I looked through the open front door toward Mark and Rebecca's basement. What year was this place renovated? Mark pulled out his phone. I think 2019. My chest tightened. That was the year I quit Buckley. Rebecca saw something in my expression. You think you worked here? I don't know. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth, and that difference would matter later. By morning, the Hayes house looked as if it had been invaded by industrial machinery. Restoration crews had removed soaked drywall. 2 electricians were documenting the damaged circuits. A plumber was replacing the seized main valve. I had slept maybe 90 minutes. At 7:30, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, a woman I had never seen before stood on my porch holding a cardboard tray with 3 coffees. She was about 5'5", wearing dark jeans, waterproof boots, and a navy wool coat over a pale green sweater. Her brown hair fell to her shoulders, slightly damp from the mist. She had the same gray-green eyes as Mark, although hers were sharper at that moment. "Daniel Carter?" "Yes." "I'm Claire." She waited. I clearly failed whatever test that was supposed to be. "Mark's sister," she added. "Oh, good morning to you too. Sorry, I've had about an hour of sleep." "So is my brother, except apparently he spent most of his sleeping while his house tried to electrocute everybody." "That's one way to describe it." She held out one coffee. "Rebecca said you take it black." I accepted it. "You interviewed her about my coffee order?" She volunteered the information, along with a detailed defense of the midnight text. I laughed despite myself. She feels terrible about that. She should. She nearly gave Mark a second medical emergency. Claire smiled. It changed her entire face. Then she looked toward the house next door and became serious again. "I'm a structural engineer," she said. "Mostly commercial restoration, but Mark asked me to look at the framing after they pulled the wall." "You're an engineer?" "I know. I hide it well." "I was going to say you're young." The smile vanished. "Try that sentence again." I took a drink of coffee. "You appear to have accumulated an impressive professional background in a relatively efficient amount of time." "That's better." She was 25, I learned later, exactly 4 years younger than me. At the time, all I knew was that she had walked onto my porch carrying coffee and attitude before 8 in the morning, and I suddenly wished I had slept enough to form intelligent sentences. We crossed the driveway together. Inside the basement, Claire crouched beside the opened wall while the electrician explained what they had found. The electrical work was sloppy, but not catastrophically so. The real problem was placement. A water line had been run directly above the junction box with almost no protective separation. The pipe itself had failed at a crimped connection. Claire photographed everything. Then she pointed toward a vertical joist. "What's that?" My breath caught. There was writing on the wood. Faded black marker. BHS 619. Below it were 3 initials, LD, MC, and DC. Claire looked from the initials to me. "DC?" I didn't answer immediately. She stood. "Daniel Carter?" "Yes." Mark, who had been talking with the plumber, turned around. "What?" I stared at the writing. I remembered that wall. Not vaguely, not maybe, I remembered it. The concrete floor had been bare then. The homeowner had complained about the cost of moving the electrical panel. Len had told us we could route the supply line above it if we secured the line properly. I had argued. Not enough. Apparently not nearly enough. "I was here," I said. The basement went quiet. Claire studied me. "You told Mark you didn't know." "I didn't. Not until I saw that." "But you recognized the company." "Yes." "And you knew you worked residential renovation in this area." "Yes." Her expression hardened slightly. Mark stepped between us, not physically, but conversationally. "Claire, I'm asking, and he's answering." She looked at me again. "Do you remember installing that connection?" I moved closer to the open wall. The line had been cut out, but the failed fittings sat in a plastic evidence bag on the floor. I recognized the red paint mark immediately. Buckley crews marked lines by installer. Blue for Len, green for Miguel, red for apprentices, including me. My stomach turned. I might have. Claire folded her arms. "Might?" Red meant apprentice installation. "Were you the apprentice?" There were 2 of us. "Daniel." I looked at her. "Yes." The word felt heavier than it should have. I probably installed it. Rebecca sat slowly on the basement step. Nobody accused me of anything. That almost made it worse. For 7 years I had worked hard to become the opposite of the crews I started with. I was now maintenance supervisor for a medical office network across central Ohio. I had licenses, certifications, and a reputation for refusing shortcuts even when they were cheaper. But none of that changed a red mark on an old pipe. "I need to tell you something," I said. Mark leaned against the wall. "Okay." Buckley had problems. Claire gave a humorless laugh. "I gathered that from the part where their work almost burned down my brother's house." "I don't mean just this job. They were cutting corners on several projects. I reported them." "To who?" "The city." "When?" "Summer of 2019. Claire's expression shifted. "What month?" "August." Her eyes narrowed. "Who did you talk to?" "I filed an anonymous complaint." "Why anonymous?" "Because I was 22 and needed a paycheck." "And then?" "Nothing, as far as I knew. Len found out somebody complained. He started threatening the crew. I quit a few weeks later." Claire stared at the open wall. "What was the inspector's name?" "I never met him." "What name was on the response letter?" I tried to remember. Then I saw something change in Mark's face. He already understood where she was going. Claire looked at him. "Dad was working residential compliance in 2019. Mark straightened. "Claire," she turned back to me. "Our father was a city building inspector." Something cold settled inside my chest. "What was his name?" "Thomas Hayes." I knew the name. Not from meeting him, from a letter I had kept in a box for 7 years, a letter informing me that my complaint had been received, deficiencies had been identified on multiple properties, and further investigation was underway. Signed, Thomas Hayes. Claire saw the recognition on my face. "You knew his name." I saw it once. "Our father died 11 months after that investigation." "I'm sorry." "He spent the last year of his career fighting Buckley." Mark rubbed his face. "Claire, this isn't the time." "When is the time?" "When the basement isn't full of strangers." She looked angry, but beneath the anger I saw something else. Fear, not of me, of whatever this discovery might mean. She walked upstairs without another word. I stayed long enough to give Mark my phone number and tell him I would cooperate with his insurance company. When I got outside, Claire was standing beside my driveway. "Did my father ever contact you directly?" "No." "Did Buckley know you were the whistleblower?" "I don't think so." "Did you keep the letter?" I hesitated. "Yes." Her eyes met mine. "Can I see it?" I should have said yes immediately. Instead, I asked, "Why?" The question offended her. "Because my father spent months documenting that company. Because after he died, half his case files disappeared into whatever city archive eats old investigations." "Because my brother's wall has your initials in it. And now I find out you were involved in the exact investigation my father wouldn't stop talking about." "I wasn't involved with your father. You reported the company he was investigating. That's not the same thing." "No, it isn't." Her voice softened unexpectedly. "That's why I want to know what is." I brought her into my house. The box was in the back of my bedroom closet beneath old tax files, my high school yearbook, and a stack of photographs I hadn't looked at in years. Claire waited in the living room. When I returned, I handed her the letter. She read it once, then again. Her thumb stopped over the signature. For the first time since I met her, she seemed unsure what to say. "That's his handwriting," she said quietly. "The signature?" "The note at the bottom." I had forgotten there was a handwritten sentence beneath the typed text. "Thank you for speaking up. Doing the right thing can be expensive, but silence usually costs more." Claire sat on the edge of my couch. "He used to say that." I remained standing. She looked up. "Why did you keep this?" Because I needed proof I hadn't imagined it. Imagined what? That I tried. The room became very quiet. I wasn't proud of the answer. I had spent 7 years telling myself I had done what I could. I complained, I quit, I built a better career. But the truth was uglier. I had also walked away. I had never followed up, never asked what happened to the properties, never checked whether the company changed. I was 22. I had been scared. Both things were true. Claire folded the letter carefully. "Can I photograph this?" "Yes." She took the picture, then handed the page back. At the door, she stopped. "I'm sorry I came at you so hard downstairs." "You had reasons." "So did you." She looked toward Mark's house. Dad believed buildings kept records even when people didn't. "What does that mean?" "He said every shortcut leaves evidence somewhere. Behind drywall, under flooring, in a permit file. You just have to know where to look." Sounds like an inspector. He was exhausting. I smiled. So are engineers. She gave me a look. "Careful." Then she smiled too. That was the first time I felt it. Not attraction exactly. Attraction is easy. This was curiosity. I wanted to know what she looked like when she wasn't defending someone. I wanted to know what made her laugh when she wasn't exhausted. I wanted to know why a 25-year-old engineer carried her father's sentences around like tools. Over the next 3 days, the Hayes basement turned into the center of our lives. The insurance company wanted records. The restoration contractor wanted approvals. Mark had hospital shifts he couldn't cancel. Rebecca was teaching remotely from a borrowed desk in my dining room because half their electrical system remained shut down. And Claire kept appearing with folders. She found the original permit application. There was one problem. It had never been finalized. The final inspection field was blank. Yet the basement had been listed as permitted during the home sale. "That's impossible," Mark said. "Not impossible," Claire replied. "Just bad." Rebecca stared at the document. "We had an inspection when we bought the house." "A home inspection isn't a code inspection," I said. Claire looked at me. "Exactly." Mark groaned. "So insurance can refuse the claim?" "Maybe part of it," Claire said, "unless we establish that the condition was concealed and predated your ownership." Rebecca dropped her forehead onto the table. "I liked life better when my worst problem was writing inappropriate texts to neighbors." Mark pointed at me. "See, Daniel has already improved our marriage. Everything else feels manageable now." I laughed. Claire did too. Those small moments mattered more than I realized at the time. Before that week, my house was just a place I slept. I worked long days managing maintenance teams for medical clinics. I came home, reheated food, watched half an hour of television, and went to bed. I had friends. I had coworkers. I wasn't lonely in the dramatic sense. But there is a particular silence that develops when nobody expects you home. You stop noticing it after a while. Then suddenly 4 people are arguing over takeout containers at your dining table, and someone is complaining that your silverware drawer makes no organizational sense. That someone was Claire. "Forks beside cooking utensils?" she asked. "I know where everything is." That is not a system. It works. For one person. I opened another drawer. "Do you always evaluate kitchens structurally?" "Only bad ones." She moved my forks. I moved them back. She stared at me. "Are we really doing this?" "It's my house." "Your house is wrong." "You're very comfortable for someone who met me 72 hours ago." She went still. The teasing faded from her expression. "So are you." She was right. I didn't know what to do with that. So I looked away. That became our pattern, a step closer, then a pause, not because either of us lacked interest, because both of us understood the circumstances. Her brother's house was damaged. My name was literally inside the wall. There were questions about whether work I had done as an apprentice contributed to the failure. Romance would have been an irresponsible complication. Unfortunately, understanding that did nothing to make her less interesting. On Thursday afternoon, Claire called me at work. I found something. What? A completion checklist from the Buckley project. My hand tightened around the phone. What kind of checklist? Internal. Where? Mark found a folder the previous owner left in the garage. And? She went quiet. Your signature is on it. I sat down. I remembered. Not the exact sheet, but dozens like it. Buckley required installers to sign task completion forms. I probably signed hundreds. This one lists water rough-in, electrical clearance, pressure test, and framing check. I wasn't authorized to inspect electrical. I know. What exactly did I sign? That work had been completed according to plan. My stomach sank. Claire, did you know the work wasn't according to plan? I looked through the glass wall of my office. 2 technicians were loading filters onto a cart outside. Yes. Silence. When? By the end of the job. But you signed this. Probably before I understood everything Len changed. Probably? I need to see the date. June 26th. I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what happened that week. Len had ordered the water line rerouted because the homeowner refused to pay for the original design. I had argued about clearance. Then I installed the line anyway. Daniel? I knew. Her voice changed. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. You told us you might have installed the connection. I did. You didn't tell us you remembered arguing about the placement. I remembered pieces. Did you remember before this morning? Yes. How long? Since I saw the wall. She was silent again. Why'd you say that? Because I wasn't certain what I remembered. Were you uncertain? Or were you hoping it wouldn't matter? I had no answer fast enough. She found one in my silence. I have to go. Claire! She hung up. That evening, I crossed the driveway to Mark's house with the letter, my old work notebook, and every photograph I could find from Buckley. Claire was there. She barely looked at me. Mark did. What's going on? I left something out. Rebecca looked worried. I placed the old notebook on their kitchen counter. I remembered arguing with Len about the line placement. I should have told you sooner. Mark leaned against the sink. Why didn't you? Because I was ashamed. Claire finally looked at me. That's an explanation. It isn't a justification. I know. You were 22 when you made the mistake. You were 29 when you decided not to tell us. That landed exactly where it deserved to. Rebecca started to speak. Claire held up a hand. I'm not saying Daniel caused the pipe failure. I might have, I said. She looked at me. Maybe, but that isn't what I'm angry about. I know. Do you? Yes. She folded her arms. Then say it. I swallowed. I decided what information you needed instead of giving you the truth and letting you decide what it meant. Her face softened slightly. Exactly. Mark opened my notebook. What is this? My job notes. I kept measurements, materials, complaints, whatever I thought might protect me if Len blamed something on me later. Claire stepped closer despite herself. You documented the job? Some of it. We went through the pages. June 24. Owner wants cheaper route. LD says run supply over junction. Told him clearance looks wrong. He said secure it and move on. June 26th. Signed completion sheet. Still unhappy with electrical distance. July 3. Saw MC replacing fitting after pressure issue. LD said leave it. Claire stopped. MC? Miguel Cortez, another apprentice. Replacing which fitting? I don't know. She looked at me. The failed connection could have been replaced after you installed it. Could have. That matters. It doesn't erase what I signed. No, her answer was immediate, but it matters. I appreciated that about Claire, even when it hurt. She didn't need people to be completely innocent before she cared about them. She just needed them to stop hiding. We spent another hour scanning the notebook. When I left, Claire followed me outside. She stopped beneath the porch light. "I'm still angry." "You should be. Don't agree with me just because you think it makes you look accountable." "I'm not." "Good." She shoved her hands into her coat pockets. "I liked you." The sentence hit me so hard I almost forgot the rest of the conversation. "Liked?" She rolled her eyes. "That is the least important word in that sentence. Feels important from where I'm standing. I liked you because you seemed like somebody who dealt with problems directly." "I do. Usually. Usually. That's not enough for me." Her voice had gone quieter. I understood then that this wasn't just about a pipe. What happened? She looked away. "You don't get that story because you asked once." "Fair. I'm sorry." "I know. Can I fix this?" Her eyes came back to mine. "That question is exactly your problem." "What? You think everything is a repair." "I work in maintenance. I'm serious." "So am I." She exhaled. "Sometimes you don't fix something, Daniel. Sometimes you tell the truth and stand there while the other person decides what to do with it." Then she walked away. For the next 2 days, I did exactly that. I gave Mark's insurance adjuster copies of everything. I told my boss about the old Buckley connection before someone else could. I contacted the city building department and gave them permission to attach my name to the old complaint if records still existed. That last decision cost me almost immediately. My company's regional director called me Friday afternoon. "We subcontract Buckley Commercial on 3 properties," he said. "I know. They're not the same company they were 7 years ago. Same ownership. That isn't the point. It feels relevant." He sighed. "Daniel, I'm not telling you to lie." "Good. I'm asking you not to make public accusations you can't prove." "I'm giving documents to an insurance investigation, which may become litigation. Then I'll tell the truth." There was a long pause. "You were being considered for regional facilities manager." I hadn't known that. The position would have meant almost $20,000 more a year. A company vehicle, less overnight emergency work, the kind of promotion I had spent years earning. Was? Let's just say corporate is nervous. I stared at the wall. 7 years earlier, I had needed a paycheck badly enough to make silence feel reasonable. I wasn't 22 anymore. "If telling the truth disqualifies me," I said, "then I was never really being considered for the job I thought I was." He didn't answer. Neither did I. When the call ended, I sat alone in my office for several minutes. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because Claire had been right. I couldn't fix everything. Sometimes all I could do was tell the truth and stand there. Saturday morning, Mark knocked on my door. "Claire told me about your promotion." "I didn't get a promotion." "Because of us." "Because of me." "You don't owe us your career." "No, but I owe myself the chance to stop repeating the same decision." Mark studied me. "Claire likes you. That makes 2 pieces of information I wish people would stop volunteering." "She'll kill me if she knows I told you." "Then why are you telling me?" "Because I'm a nurse. We meddle." "I don't think that's part of the license." "It should be." He sat on my couch. "She was engaged once." I said nothing. "He cheated on her." That explains some things, but not enough. Mark continued. "The cheating hurt. The lying afterward hurt worse. He made her question what she already knew. Every time she found something, he gave her 90% of the truth." I looked down. "So when I held something back, you stepped on a landmine you didn't know existed." "That doesn't make it okay." "No." He smiled faintly. "You two are annoyingly compatible." I leaned back. What am I supposed to do? For once? Yeah. Nothing. That's terrible advice. Give her room. I am. Then keep doing it. He stood. At the door, he turned. And for the record, Rebecca's downstairs text is still the weirdest part of this story. On Monday, the city called. They had found archived records. Not just the complaint, the investigation file. I drove downtown during lunch and sat in a records office while a clerk brought out 2 thick folders. Thomas Hayes had documented 11 properties renovated by Buckley between 2018 and 2020. Mark's house was number 7. The file contained photographs, inspection notes, correspondence, and interviews. Then I found my name. Not in the public report. In Thomas Hayes's private notes. Daniel Carter, apprentice. Possible source. Do not expose without consent. Young worker appears afraid of retaliation. Claims supervisor directing unpermitted deviations. Information consistent with site findings. Below that was another handwritten line. If this kid stays in the trade, I hope someone gives him a better example. I read it 3 times. My throat tightened. Thomas Hayes had known. He had protected me, and he had believed me. I photographed the page with permission and sent it to Mark. Not Claire, Mark. This wasn't something I wanted to use to win her back. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Claire. Where are you? City Archives. I'm outside. I walked into the lobby. She came through the glass doors carrying her father's old leather folder against her chest. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she held up her phone. Mark sent me the page. I told him not to use it to pressure you. He didn't. She stepped closer. I found something too. We sat on a bench near the windows. Claire opened the leather folder. Inside was a small spiral notebook. My mother had this in a box, she said. She gave it to me yesterday. She turned to a marked page. My name was there again. D. Carter called from payphone. Would not give name at first. Scared. Says foreman changing work after rough inspections. Asked whether he could be held responsible if somebody got hurt. I remembered that call. I had forgotten the payphone. Buckley's supervisor checked company phone records, so I had driven to a gas station. Claire turned the page. Another note. Told him responsibility starts with what you do next, not only what you did before. I looked away. Your dad had a way with sentences. He practiced them on us for years. She smiled through wet eyes. He would have liked you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Her voice broke slightly. He liked scared people who did the right thing anyway. I stared at the floor. Didn't do enough. Maybe not. That answer made me look at her. Claire closed the notebook. But I'm starting to think nobody does enough the first time. Neither of us moved. Finally, I said, I'm sorry I withheld what I remembered. I know. I wasn't trying to manipulate you. I know that too. I was afraid if the fitting was mine, everything you thought about me would change. It did. My chest tightened. She continued, I stopped thinking you were fearless. I laughed once. I never claimed that. No, I assumed it. She looked directly at me. I don't need fearless, Daniel. What do you need? Someone who tells me when he's afraid. That was harder than any confession I had rehearsed in my head. But she had asked for truth. So I gave it to her. I'm afraid you'll decide the part of me that hid the truth matters more than the part that came back. Claire's eyes stayed on mine. I'm afraid I'll trust somebody again and discover I only knew the version of him he wanted me to see. I can't promise I'll never be ashamed of something. I'm not asking you to. I can promise I won't make you dig for it. She looked down at her father's notebook. That's a better promise. We sat there another minute, then she leaned her shoulder against mine. It was such a small thing. No dramatic kiss, no declaration. Just contact. But I understood what it meant. She had chosen not to leave. The insurance investigation took another 3 weeks. The final engineering report produced the strongest twist of all. My original installation had been badly placed. That remained true, but it hadn't caused the rupture. The failed fitting bore tool marks inconsistent with the crimpers Buckley used during my time there. Miguel's replacement note in my notebook turned out to matter. A later alteration had been made after I left. Then, 2 years before Mark and Rebecca bought the house, another contractor had added insulation around the exterior wall and blocked warm airflow around that section of pipe. During an unusually cold stretch, the line repeatedly froze and expanded. The weakened replacement fitting finally split. No single person had created the disaster. It was a chain. A bad decision, a hidden correction, another shortcut, years of silence, then one cold night. Claire stood beside me in the basement as the engineer explained the conclusion. "So Daniel didn't cause the failure?" Rebecca asked. "Not directly," the engineer said. "His crew's original routing created an unsafe condition around the electrical equipment. The water failure itself resulted from subsequent work." Mark looked at me. "You hear that?" "I hear it. You're allowed to look relieved." "I am relieved." Claire watched me. "But—" I looked at the open wall. "But the routing was still wrong." She nodded. "That's the correct answer." Rebecca threw a roll of painter's tape at her. "Can you stop grading him for 10 minutes? Claire caught it. "No." The insurance company ultimately covered the majority of the damage because the hazardous conditions predated Mark and Rebecca's ownership and had not been disclosed. The city reopened a review of several Buckley-era renovations. My employer did not fire me. I also didn't get the promotion. Strangely, that bothered me less than I expected. The bigger surprise came when 2 clinic administrators heard why I had lost consideration for the position and asked whether I would help create an independent preventive maintenance inspection program for their properties. For years, I had assumed doing the right thing cost you something, and that was the end of the story. Sometimes it did. Sometimes the cost also made room for something else. By March, the Hayes basement had new wiring, properly routed plumbing, a legal access panel, and enough documentation to survive a congressional investigation. Rebecca invited everyone over for dinner to celebrate. Claire arrived late from a site inspection. I was helping Mark carry food outside when she stepped onto the patio wearing jeans, a white blouse, and the tired expression of someone who had spent 8 hours arguing with contractors. She saw me and smiled. That smile still affected me more than I wanted anyone to know. We had been careful over the previous month. Coffee, dinner twice, a Saturday afternoon at the Franklin Park Conservatory, one evening assembling shelves in her apartment after she insisted she did not need help and then discovered the manufacturer had included 2 left brackets. Nothing had been rushed. That mattered. She had never asked me to prove I was trustworthy. I'd stopped trying. I simply behaved like someone who wanted to be trusted. After dinner, Mark and Rebecca disappeared inside to find dessert. Claire and I remained on the patio. "You're quiet," she said. Thinking. Dangerous. About that first night. The infamous text? Hard to forget. Rebecca wants it removed from the historical record. Never. Claire rested her elbows on the railing. If she hadn't sent it, we probably wouldn't have met. I'd seen you once. She looked at me. When? Christmas. You were getting out of Mark's car. That doesn't count. I noticed you. Her smile changed. You did? I thought you were Mark's coworker. Romantic. I'm telling you the truth. Good recovery. I leaned against the railing beside her. What did you think of me when we met? You really want to know? Yes. I thought you were hiding something. I laughed. That was fast. I was right. You were. She turned toward me. I also thought you had kind eyes. I stopped laughing. That sounds less scientific. I'm off the clock. We stood close enough that I could feel warmth from her shoulder. For weeks I had been waiting for some perfectly clear moment when I would know what to do. That moment never came. So I did something better. I asked, "Can I kiss you?" Claire looked at me for a long second. Then she smiled. Yes. It was a quiet kiss, warm, unhurried. Nothing like the dramatic moment I might have imagined years earlier. It felt better than drama. It felt chosen. When we pulled apart, the patio door opened. Mark stepped outside carrying pie. He saw us, stopped, turned around, walked back inside. Claire laughed against my shoulder. I think we broke him. He works in emergency medicine. He'll recover. From inside, Rebecca shouted, "I told you!" Mark shouted something back that I couldn't understand. Claire covered her face. This family has no boundaries. I noticed. She lowered her hands. You could still escape. I looked at her. Well, I'm not going anywhere. The words came out before I could evaluate them. Claire's expression softened. Good. 6 months later, I left my maintenance company. Not angrily, not dramatically. I simply realized I wanted to build something of my own. I started a residential safety and preventive maintenance service specializing in older homes, especially renovations where previous owners had done questionable work. Claire helped me design inspection checklists. She refused payment during the first month. I refused to accept free labor. We compromised by arguing about it repeatedly. By the second month, I hired her engineering firm for structural consultations. Mark became my loudest unofficial advertiser. Rebecca became worse. She told every homeowner within 3 blocks that I had saved her marriage, house, cat, and insurance claim, although only one of those statements was remotely accurate. Business grew. So did Claire and I. There were no magical transformations. I still tried to solve problems too quickly. She still interrogated inconsistencies like they were load-bearing defects. I learned to tell her when I was worried instead of waiting until I had a solution. She learned that asking for help did not mean surrendering control. We fought once about work, twice about scheduling, 3 times about whether my kitchen drawers were organized correctly. I lost that last argument permanently. The following winter, almost exactly a year after Rebecca's midnight text, snow started falling over Columbus around 11 at night. Claire was at my house. By then, she had a toothbrush in my bathroom, 3 sweaters in my closet, and a coffee mug in my cabinet that said, "Trust me, I'm an engineer." We were sitting on the couch when my phone buzzed. 12:04 a.m. Rebecca. Claire saw the name. No way! I opened the message. Mark is asleep. Are you free? Claire stared at me. I stared at her. Then another message arrived. Before you panic, the dishwasher is making a horrible noise. Claire burst out laughing. I typed back, "Turn it off. I'll look tomorrow." 3 dots appeared. Emergency? I answered. No water on the floor? No. No smoke? No. Then it can wait until morning. Rebecca sent a thumbs up. I put my phone down. Claire was still smiling. You've changed. How? A year ago, you would have grabbed your tools. A year ago, I thought being useful was the same thing as being needed. And now? I looked at her. Now I know the difference. She became quiet. Outside, snow gathered along the windowsill. There was something I had been planning to ask her for weeks. Not because we had reached some deadline, not because Mark and Rebecca expected it, not because surviving one difficult year meant we were obligated to turn it into forever. I wanted to ask because Claire had become the first person with whom I didn't feel required to arrive already repaired. I reached into the drawer of the side table. Her eyes widened. Daniel, this isn't what you think. That is absolutely a ring box. It contains a ring, yes. She stared at me. You said it wasn't what I thought. I meant I'm not proposing tonight. Her expression became so confused I almost laughed. What? I handed her the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a tiny engraved date on the inside. 6/24. The date from my old notebook. The day I first wrote that something was wrong in the Hayes basement. Claire touched the engraving. Why? Because I spent years thinking that date represented a mistake. I sat beside her. Your father's notes made me realize it was also the day I started paying attention to the kind of man I wanted to become. She looked at me. And the ring? It belonged to my grandmother. Claire went very still. I had it resized. To my size? Yes. And you're not proposing? Not tonight. She narrowed her eyes. You enjoy danger. Apparently. I took the box back. I'm showing you because I don't want to hide plans from you just because I'm afraid of ruining the surprise. Her eyes filled. You are ridiculous. Probably. When are you proposing? That part is still a surprise. She laughed through tears. You've created the most emotionally responsible form of suspense imaginable. I learned from an engineer. She leaned into me. I kissed her forehead. 2 months later, on the first warm Saturday of spring, I brought Claire to the city archives. The same lobby, the same bench. I had arranged with the clerk to let us view copies of Thomas Hayes's notes again. Claire smiled when she realized where we were. You're sentimental. Don't tell anyone. We read the page together, told him responsibility starts with what you do next, not only what you did before. Then I stood. Claire looked up at me. I reached into my jacket. This time, when she saw the ring box, she didn't look confused. She started crying before I even opened it. I had a speech, I said. I'm sorry. You're ruining the timing. I'll stop. You're still crying. I'm trying. I took her hand. For most of my life, I had believed love would be safest when I had everything handled first. When I had enough money, enough certainty, enough answers, when every problem had already been solved. Claire taught me something harder. Love wasn't waiting for a perfect structure. It was letting someone see the beams, the cracks, the repairs, the places where you had made mistakes, and then asking whether they wanted to build the rest with you anyway. Claire Hayes, I said, I can't promise you a life without things breaking. She laughed. Good start. I can promise I'll never make you stand outside the wall guessing what's hidden behind it. Her fingers tightened around mine. I'll tell you when I'm afraid. I'll tell you when I've made a mistake. I'll listen when you tell me something isn't working. And I'll keep choosing you. Especially when choosing you requires more than saying it. Her tears were falling freely now. So, I said, will you marry me? Yes. I blinked. That was fast. Daniel, I'm just saying, given your inspection standards, she pulled me up by my jacket and kissed me. When we finally separated, the archives clerk behind the counter was applauding. Claire laughed. I slipped the ring onto her finger. Outside, spring sunlight reflected off the glass buildings downtown. She stared at the ring for a long moment. Dad would have loved this. I knew she didn't mean the proposal. She meant everything that had led us there. The complaint, the hidden wall, the old notebook, the second chance. I wish I'd met him, I said. Claire looked at me. In a strange way, you did. We married that October in a small ceremony outside Columbus. Mark was my best man. Rebecca gave a toast that began, "For anyone who thinks inappropriate midnight texting ruins marriages, I would like to present evidence to the contrary." Everyone laughed. Claire nearly hid beneath the table. Later, while we danced beneath strings of warm lights, she rested her head against my chest. "Do you realize," she said, "that your entire life changed because my sister-in-law couldn't find a water valve? I prefer to think it changed because I answered responsibly. You asked if she needed the police. I was protecting myself. Very romantic. You weren't there." "No," she looked up at me, "but you came anyway." That was the part I remembered most. Not the suggestive message, not the broken pipe, not even the fire alarm. I remembered crossing a driveway because somebody needed help. At the time, I thought I was walking toward a problem I knew how to solve. I had no idea I was walking toward Mark and Rebecca, who would become family to me. I had no idea an old mistake was waiting behind their wall. I had no idea a dead inspector had once protected a frightened 22-year-old apprentice he never properly met. And I certainly had no idea that inspector's daughter would eventually become my wife. Life rarely announces its turning points correctly. Sometimes they look like disasters. Sometimes they look like mistakes returning to punish you. Sometimes they arrive as a text message so badly worded that you consider pretending you never received it. A year after our wedding, Mark and Rebecca finally finished the basement. The dangerous utility wall became a clean mechanical room with labeled shutoffs, separate electrical clearance, leak sensors, and an automatic water shutoff valve. Naturally, Claire inspected it. Twice. Mark framed a copy of the original midnight text and hung it near the basement stairs. Rebecca threatened divorce. Nobody believed her. Below the message, Mark added a small brass plaque. "The night everything broke correctly." I thought it was ridiculous. Claire loved it. Eventually, so did I. Because that was what the night had done. It broke a pipe. It opened a wall. It exposed an old mistake. It ended 7 years of guilt I had confused with responsibility. And somehow, in the middle of all that damage, it opened the door to the healthiest relationship I had ever known. People often say the past stays buried until someone digs it up. I don't think that's true. The past doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes it leaks. It stains the ceiling. It trips the breaker. It waits behind drywall until the pressure becomes too much, and when it finally comes out, you get a choice. You can cover the wall again, or you can shut off the water, turn on the lights, and finally look at what's there. That was the choice I had avoided at 22. At 29, I made a different one. Claire did too. And every important thing that came afterward began with that. So if there's one thing I learned from the strangest midnight message I've ever received, it's this. The sentence that changes your life may not mean what you think it means at first. Give people room to explain. Tell the truth before someone has to drag it out of you. And when a second chance appears, don't waste it trying to look flawless. Use it to become honest. Sometimes that is how a flooded basement becomes a friendship. How an old mistake becomes a lesson. How strangers become family, and how the wrong-looking message, sent at exactly the right moment, leads you home.